Chapter 59 today of EVERNIGHT by Ross Mackenzie, and it's called Payback. 2 days had passed since the sun returned, and still the festivities showed no sign of slowing. The streets were alive with celebration, with singing and dancing, with fire whiskey and food and laughter. Among all of this, Lara and her friends cut through the crowds, heads down, trying not to be recognised. Lara was not smiling. These streets were familiar to her, of course. She had grown up on them, and they had been a part of her, running through her blood, for so long. But now she felt like a stranger in the city. She had been among the crowds when the Silver King had addressed his people yesterday, and Lara had shaken her head when he could be so bombastic and arrogant. He had claimed victory over the EVERNIGHT for himself and made out that the Silver Kingdom and Mrs. Hester's White Witches were responsible for pushing back the darkness. Mrs. Hester had been strangely absent. Lara wondered what had become of her. Was she still out there, hiding in the shadows, licking her wounds? In most of the city, the Silver King's announcements that anyone who had been marked by the painted should be immediately arrested and made to stand trial was popular. The coppers had already begun arresting and trying those who'd been cursed. They were easy to spot with the scars on their foreheads. Easy to blame too, Lara realised. Some of them had already been hanged. These were people with families, people who had done nothing wrong except be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Because of this, unrest was beginning to creep around the slums. Many of the slum folks had been bewitched or lost loved ones in the fight. Anger towards the king, disgust that he had been willing to leave the poor trapped in the city to face the EVERNIGHT alone, was growing, and Lara sensed that this was the start of something bigger. The first cracks, maybe, in the armour of the Silver Kingdom. She pushed through a crowd of drinkers down Needle Street and into Bone Alley. Ting-a-ling-ling! Old Hans was not known for his lovely complexion, but when he looked up from his counter and saw Lara and her friends standing in his shop, he turned a shade of green, unhealthy even by his own standards. "Don't say a word," Lara told him. "Don't scream for help or try to attract attention. Otherwise you'll have a shop full of very angry witches. You hear?" Old Hans nodded fearfully. "What you want, Lara?" She stared at him, and she felt tall and powerful. "You've heard what they're doing to them that the painted cursed?" Old Hans nodded. "Can't be too careful, can we? I mean, who's to say they won't turn bad again at the drop of a hat, eh? Who's to say the hags can't now use them for their own means?" "That's not how it works. It could have been you, Old Hans. Would you feel differently then?" He shrugged, stuck out his chin. Lara leaned on the counter. "This is what is going to happen. I'm going to smuggle as many of those poor marked folk out of this city as I can. To do that, I need a boat. To get a boat, I need coins." Old Hans stared blankly at her. "That's generally how it works, yes. I want you to give me that money." Old Hans laughed right in her face. "I ain't in the habit of doing business with hags." He spat on his own shop floor at Lara's feet. Rob Nielsen burst forward, dragging Old Hans across the counter and pinning him against a wall. "You listen here, you worthless old fart. If it wasn't for Lara, you'd still be cowering in the dark. She saved your city, your precious stinking little shop, and you will show her respect." A bead of sweat rolled down Old Hans's crooked nose. "Let him go, Rob." Lara stood face to face with Old Hans. "I think I'm a fair person. I don't want everything you got, but I know you got a safe back there, filled with all the treasures you swindled from toshers like me and Joe over the years." "That's right," said Joe, who'd stuck closely to Lara ever since the events of the night in the graveyard. "We're here to collect what we're owed for our hard work. We reckon that should be just about to cover the cost of a boat. So you run along, Old Hans, and fetch what we're due. Old Hans stared around the shop, from Lara to Bernie, Rob to Double Eight to Joe, and his shoulders slumped. He disappeared into the back. When he returned, he dropped a pile of gold onto the counter and glared at Lara. "Don't you ever come back." Lara stared at him, at the old man she had once believed to be her friend. "That I can promise."